Black woman. I speak to you as a mother, and I speak to you third as a sergeant of police. And so these things that we're speaking about today concern me greatly because I have 4 sons. And when my 4 sons leave the house, they're subject to being stopped by police for a myriad of reasons, much like me. And so none of us are immune, right? And so the basis for what I'm going to be sharing with you today comes from 20 years on the Los Angeles Police Department between 1980 and 2000. I worked under Daryl Gates, Willie Williams, and Bernard Parks. And I spent all 20 years in uniform as a patrol officer and a patrol supervisor. So what I'm saying to you is not something that I think, it's what I know. It's what I lived, it's what I did, it's what I saw. And the reason that this bill is so important is because what I know about police officers and the culture is that great deference is given to what I say as a police officer and what I do as a police officer. And while this bill is important and a great first step, and I encourage everyone wholeheartedly to get behind it, but don't get comfortable, don't become complacent and think that this is the end-all and the cure-all. Because when you understand that great deference is given to what I say, I can articulate why it's reasonable to use deadly force, and I can articulate why it might be necessary. We're taught that deadly force is to be used as a last resort and not a first resort. And too often we see officers doing just the opposite. We see officers using deadly force first. And that's not to say that that was their intent, but sometimes I think things go terribly wrong, and in the moment, they realize, I've got to come up with something that's going to justify this thing that should have never occurred. And so they do. And because great deference is given to what we say, it's taken at face value. It's very difficult for jurors to find fault with what we do when what we do is done in a split second. But you know, when you understand that we have tremendous power and that sometimes because of our biases and our own particular hang-ups, we don't always do things the right way. And for that, I came up with a term that I trademarked, which is contempt of cop. And by that, what I mean is, if you do something that pisses me off, there's a price to pay. And I decide what that price is. It could be a ticket. I could arrest you on a Friday and put you in jail for something that I know is BS. It'll be a DA reject on Monday. I don't care, because I met a very low threshold to put you in jail. And I've just taken 72 hours out of your life that you'll never get back. And that's true when I use excessive force or deadly force. Police officers play like we practice. In other words, what I mean is what we're taught. And I have people ask me all the time, you know, well, why didn't the officer just shoot him in the arm, or why did they shoot him in the hand? And that's not what we're taught. And you won't hear probably another uniformed police officer tell you that we're taught to kill folks. We're taught on the LAPD to do what's called a double tap and a failure drill. That's 2 shots in rapid succession to the body, to the 10 ring, which is where your heart is. So I'm not trying to stop you, I'm trying to kill you. And then a headshot. And so if this is what you do as a first resort, rather than a last resort, you can see the problem. And in addition to that, what makes this bill so important is the accountability piece. Because understand that police officers are no different than anyone else. We live paycheck to paycheck, and most officers, particularly the males, collect a lot of toys, so they live above their means. And if they were held accountable when they use deadly force as a first resort rather than a last resort as we're trained and taught, this stuff would stop yesterday. And so while this is important, and I say don't let this be where you stop, let this be where you begin, when I talk about accountability, the next thing for me is the Police Officers' Bill of Rights. Because that's the thing that gives us great shelter. And that's the thing that we hide under when we use deadly force as a first resort rather than a last resort. And so if police officers were no longer to say that I feared for my safety, or as in the case of Terrence Crutcher, Betty Shelby said his just mere presence scared her more than anything ever in her life, and that's why she shot him in the back as he walked away from her. And there was no accountability. As in the case of Ezell Ford here in Los Angeles, who was walking down the street and minding his own business, and the officers who stopped him thought he looked suspicious, and they shot him without any consequence. If we change the accountability piece and hold officers responsible when they violate policy or procedure or law, this thing will end yesterday. And understand that police chiefs have great autonomy over their departments, and they can discipline an officer in a variety of ways. It can be something as simple as a conversation, or it could be days off. Rarely is it termination. We don't hear about it because a lot of times the Police Officers' Bill of Rights makes personnel matters a confidential issue, but it's important to understand that you can't just rely on a police chief to do the right thing with his officer, because in my opinion, the police chiefs have a responsibility to the entity, the LAPD, and they want to protect that, because they understand when there's a shooting that's out of policy that a lawsuit is coming, and so they're not going to say anything in front of a bank of cameras in a soundbite that might support that civil suit that's coming down the road. And so they do whatever they have to do to protect the entity, the organism, the department, and in a lot of instances, they wind up also supporting and protecting that officer. And so it's incumbent upon you, the community, to institute rules and regulations that will hold police chiefs accountable, hold their officers accountable, and ultimately hold those above them accountable. You know, in LA, we have an independent civilian review board, the police commission, and while that's important, they really have no teeth because they make suggestions, and then the police chief does what he wants. And so this is an election year. Every police chief serves at the pleasure of the mayor. And if they're not thinking the way you're thinking, then it's important that you do the things that are necessary to put the people in positions of authority, much like the senator, who are going to hold our officers accountable when they use deadly force as a first resort and not a last resort. And I'll stop now because I understand we're going to have some questions afterwards. Thank you.